Welcome to Alma Tales Lab, where lying wives and sneaky girlfriends finally get exposed. From girls' trips that never happened to coworkers who are a little too friendly, we break down every red flag, messy receipt, and suspicious text with humor, shock, and just a little bit of petty. Expect wild stories, dramatic reactions, and satisfying karma as the truth comes crashing through the door. If you love relationship tea, plot twists, and seeing players get played, this channel is your new home. Every single chaotic, jaw-dropping, binge-worthy episode. Hit subscribe and never miss a fresh dose of exposed cheating. Don't forget to check our previous stories. Let's get into it. The cruelest thing my wife ever did was mock me as just the broke one in front of her boss at a fancy dinner. Then smile like my humiliation was the price of sitting at her table. Here's how it happened. My name is Kendrick Vaughn, 36, black, raised in Detroit, and living in Chicago now. The kind of man who believes love is something you prove with consistency. I work in facilities compliance for a medical network. Unsexy work, steady pay, long hours, and a reputation for fixing problems before they become disasters. I thought being dependable made me safe. I didn't realize it made me easy to use. The night she embarrassed me. The restaurant was bright and expensive in that quiet way. Linen napkins, low music, people talking like money was a language. It was her boss's birthday dinner, and my wife, Simone Vaughn, was glowing with ambition. She wore a sleek emerald dress and a smile she saved for important people. When she introduced me, she squeezed my arm like a handler. "This is Kendrick," she said, then added with a laugh. "My husband, the broke one." Her boss, Darian Caldwell, chuckled politely. The couple beside him laughed harder. Simone's eyes stayed on me like a dare. "React so I can call you weak." I didn't argue. I didn't correct her. I didn't flinch. I just nodded like I agreed because I knew what she didn't. When the waiter came back with the check, he didn't hand it to Simone's boss. He didn't set it in the middle. He placed it in front of me, looked me in the eye, and said, "Whenever you're ready, Mr. Vaughn." Simone's smile froze so fast it looked painful. Her boss leaned forward, and that's when she realized the broke one had been paying for a lot more than dinner. The thing about humiliation is it teaches you. If you let it. I let it teach me. Simone and I met at a Summer Street festival near Navy Pier when I was new to Chicago. She was magnetic, smart, stylish, quick with jokes. She danced to the band like she didn't care who was watching, then pulled me in like I belonged there. Our first date was deep dish and a walk along the lakefront. She teased me for reading restaurant reviews like I was conducting an audit. I teased her for ordering drinks with names longer than a lease agreement. When she laughed, she touched my wrist like it was natural. When she kissed me goodnight, she whispered, "You feel safe." I thought that was a compliment. I didn't realize it was a category. I'm not a flashy man. I like quiet mornings, clean budgets, and the kind of love you can count on. Simone was the opposite, in the best ways at first. She brought color into my life. Impromptu concerts, new restaurants, outfits that made heads turn. When she moved into my place in Bronzeville, we made our own rituals. Sunday mornings were pancakes and old R&B. She'd sit on the counter in a satin robe, tapping her acrylic nails against her mug like a metronome while I flipped pancakes and pretended to be offended by her chef critiques. We had jokes. We had romance. We had that feeling of being a team until we didn't. The disrespect started quietly after we got married. Simone got promoted at her marketing firm downtown, and suddenly everything became about appearances. She started correcting the way I dressed, the way I spoke, even the way I laughed. At dinners with her coworkers, she'd cut me off mid-sentence and finish my thought like I was slow. If I asked a question she didn't like, she'd pinch my arm under the table and smile through her teeth. Then, later, she'd blame me for being socially clumsy. When I told her it hurt, she shrugged and said, "You're too sensitive. Men don't get sensitive." She never apologized, not once. There were still romantic moments, which is what kept me confused. She could be sweet when she wanted something, like warmth was a button she pressed. She'd kiss my cheek and say, "My steady man," then ask if I could cover a small bill she forgot. She'd climb into my lap and whisper plans for a weekend trip, then hand me the booking link like I was the wallet. Once, She surprised me with tickets to a comedy show in the Loop, and we laughed so hard my face hurt. On the way home, she leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "I love how you take care of things." I didn't hear the warning in that sentence until later. The humiliations became routine. Simone started calling me budget boy in front of her friends like it was cute. If I hesitated at a pricey menu, she'd laugh and say, "Don't worry, Kendrick will figure it out. He's good at stretching pennies." Her friends would giggle, and I'd smile like it was nothing. The funny part is I wasn't broke. I just wasn't reckless. I paid our rent early, our insurance on time, and I kept savings because life happens. Simone hated that. She wanted my discipline to feel like poverty because it made her feel superior. If you can shame someone for being careful, you can pressure them into being careless for you. The worst humiliation was financial. Simone convinced me to combine accounts for transparency, then started spending like we were famous. She bought handbags, salon packages, and weekend brunches with friends I barely knew. When I raised concerns, she'd tilt her head and say, "Are you controlling me?" Like budgeting was abuse. She'd say, "My boss's wife doesn't check prices," as if comparison was a marriage vow. Meanwhile, I was the one waking up early to pick up overtime shifts. I'd come home tired, and she'd be on the couch scrolling, asking, "What's for dinner?" like I was her employee. My love language was acts of service, and Simone turned it into a leash. I'd cook, clean, pay, fix, plan. She'd criticize, mock, and demand. One night, I surprised her with roses and a handwritten note. She read it, smiled, posted it online, and then asked me to pick up her dry cleaning. That was Simone, public sweetness, private entitlement. She loved the image of being cherished more than she loved me. And she had a talent for humiliation that felt casual, like she was just being honest. If I forgot to buy oat milk, she'd say, "See, this is why I need a real man." Then she'd laugh like it was a joke, and I'd feel my stomach sink. Her boss, Darian Caldwell, became the center of her world. Darian was successful, polished, and always talking about high standards. Simone started bringing his name into our home like it was scripture. Darian says a man should spoil his wife, she'd tell me, while folding clothes she didn't pay for. Darian says couples who struggle financially don't travel. She'd say it with a look that made me feel like I was failing a test I didn't sign up for. The funniest thing was how she'd act like Darian was the judge of our marriage. Darian would never let his wife look cheap, she'd say, then toss a shopping bag on the bed like a trophy. The romantic parts became rarer, but they still happened, sharp enough to cut. Some nights, after I cooked and she finally ate, she'd soften and curl up beside me. We'd watch movies, and she'd laugh at my commentary like she used to. I'd catch that old version of her for a moment, and my heart would jump like a fool. Once, she kissed me and whispered, "You're my home." The next day, she told her sister on speakerphone, "He's dependable, but he's not impressive." Her sister laughed. Simone laughed too. I stood in the hallway holding a bag of groceries, listening like a stranger in my own life. I started noticing patterns. Every time Simone humiliated me, it was followed by a request. Every insult came with a handout. Budget boy, then, "Can you send me $300? Broke one, then book the hotel. Not impressive, then pay for the dinner." I began to realize the humiliation wasn't random. It was strategy. If she could make me feel small, I'd work harder to prove myself. I'd spend more. I'd bend more. I'd apologize more. Simone didn't want a partner. She wanted a performer. And the stage was my dignity. The lead up to Darian's birthday dinner was a month of pressure. Simone said it was important for optics, like our marriage was a brand. She made me buy a new suit, then criticized it. She told me to speak less and smile more. She practiced introductions in the mirror like she was preparing for court. The night of the dinner, she adjusted my collar and said, "Please don't embarrass me." I joked, trying to keep it light. I thought I was the broke one. I can't afford embarrassment. She didn't laugh. She just stared and said, "Don't do that." That's when I knew she wasn't bringing me as a husband. She was bringing me as a prop. At the restaurant in River North, Simone transformed into her public self, charming, warm, glowing. She laughed at Darian's jokes like they were genius. She touched his arm when she spoke, just enough to signal closeness. When I talked, she looked away. When I stayed quiet, she acted relieved. Then she did it. The line, the smirk, the laugh. "This is Kendrick, my husband, the broke one." The table laughed. I felt heat crawl up my neck, but I kept my face calm. Simone watched me like she wanted me to snap. I didn't give her that. I took a sip of water and let the moment sit, heavy and silent, like a bill coming due. The waiter returned with the check, and the universe did something neat. He placed it in front of me and said, "Whenever you're ready, Mr. Vaughn." Simone's eyes flicked to the check like she expected it to burst into flames. Darian leaned in, curious. Simone tried to recover with a laugh. "Oh, he just likes to do that," she said, waving a hand. The waiter shook his head politely. "It's under Mr. Vaughn's reservation," he said, "and the card on file is his." Darian's eyebrows lifted. Simone's smile stiffened. That one sentence did what my arguments never could. It made my role visible. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I simply opened the check folder and signed the receipt calmly. My name looked clean and bold on paper. Simone's friend across the table stared like she'd just learned I could read. Darian nodded slowly, reassessing. Simone's face tightened, and I saw something ugly there. Anger, not embarrassment. She wasn't ashamed of mocking me. She was angry that the power dynamic slipped in front of people she cared about. On the ride home, she didn't apologize. She snapped, "Why would you let the waiter say that?" Like my name was a mistake I should have hidden to protect her ego. That was the night something in me went quiet. Not rage, just clarity. I stopped trying to make Simone understand. I started protecting myself. I went to work the next morning and sat at my desk with the same focus I use when a building inspection is coming. I pulled our bank statements, credit card history, and joint account activity. I didn't do it dramatically. I did it like a man checking for leaks. I found them, monthly transfers to accounts I didn't recognize, Cash App payments labeled as consulting, subscriptions I never signed up for. Simone wasn't just disrespectful. She was siphoning, and she did it with the confidence of someone who believed I'd never push back. The humiliations kept coming, and karma started showing up right behind them like a shadow. Simone mocked me for packing lunch instead of eating out. That week, I canceled the shared food delivery account and changed the password. She stood in the kitchen yelling at her phone because her order wouldn't go through. She called me controlling. I looked at her and said, "No, I'm budgeting." She mocked me for driving an older car. That same week, I removed her access to the car insurance app and stopped paying for her expensive add-ons. She didn't feel bad. She got mad. But each humiliation started costing her more than it cost me. I also got smart about romance because I wasn't going to let bitterness make me a colder man. I started doing small, kind things for myself, buying fresh flowers for my own kitchen, taking myself to a quiet diner after work, calling my mother more often. I even went on a solo walk along the lakefront and laughed at how peaceful it felt when no one was grading me. One night, I remembered how Simone used to love my pancakes, so I made them anyway, just for me, and sent a picture to my cousin with the caption, "Cooking like I'm still lovable." My cousin replied, "You are. You just married someone blind." It made me laugh out loud for the first time in weeks. Simone tried to humiliate me into compliance again by involving her family. At her mother's house on the south side, she said loudly, "Kendrick is stressed because money is tight," like she was announcing a weather report. Her mother looked at me with pity. Simone's aunt joked, "A man should provide, baby." Everyone laughed like it was normal. I smiled politely and ate my food, but inside I decided something. Nobody gets to shame me with my own labor. The next day, I opened a separate account in my name only and moved my direct deposit. Quiet, clean, no argument, just action. Simone noticed the shift quickly. She started asking questions disguised as jokes. "Why are you acting like you're the CEO of your little paycheck?" she said one night, tapping her nails on the counter. I kept my voice calm. "Because I am," I replied. She rolled her eyes. "Whatever," she said, then went back to scrolling. She didn't realize what was happening. She thought she could outweight me, outtalk me, outshame me. That's what she always did. But I wasn't debating anymore. I was exiting with dignity. And the more she tried to humiliate me, the more the consequences tightened around her like a belt. I spoke to a lawyer quietly, not to get revenge, but to stop bleeding. The lawyer explained separation options, financial protections, and what documentation mattered. I didn't tell Simone. I didn't threaten her. I started collecting receipts, screenshots, bank logs, dates, amounts. I kept everything in a folder titled Home Repairs, because Simone never opened anything labeled boring. There was a strange humor in that. She thought I was simple. She never understood I was patient. She thought loudness was power. She never respected silence. My silence wasn't weakness. It was preparation. Simone's final humiliation attempt came at another dinner, this time with two coworkers and their spouses at a steakhouse near the Loop. She did the same thing again, laughed and said, "Kendrick loves to act rich, but he's really just the broke one." I looked at her and smiled softly. "That's true," I said, and her eyes lit up, thinking she won. Then I added, "That's why I stopped funding everything you don't earn." The table went still. Simone's face turned sharp. "What does that mean?" she hissed. I didn't explain at the table. I simply pulled out my phone, paid only for my meal, tipped well, and stood up. "You all have a good night," I said. Quiet karma tastes like composure. The practical karma hit hard over the next week. Simone's shared cards declined. Her subscriptions cut off. Her girls' brunch payments bounced. She called me furious, then sweet, then furious again. She didn't apologize once. She said, "You're trying to punish me," like consequences were cruelty. I responded only in writing, simple sentences. "I'm paying my responsibilities, not your luxuries." She tried to shame me by telling her boss I was unstable. But Darian had seen the check. He had seen my name. He had watched her mock me. He didn't defend her. He didn't care. People like Darian respect power, not loyalty. Simone had been using my loyalty as a cushion and calling it weakness. Now that cushion was gone. Simone attempted a different kind of humiliation. She tried to kick me out emotionally. She told me the apartment felt heavy when I was there. She said she needed space. She suggested I sleep on the couch, since I'm the one being weird. I laughed once, short and bitter, because the audacity almost impressed me. "No," I said. "I'll sleep in my bed." Simone glared like I had violated a rule. That's when I understood. She believed she owned the right to degrade me. She believed my calm meant consent. I stopped being calm in the way she needed. I became calm in the way that ends things. I moved my valuables and sentimental items quietly, documents, watch, photos, my grandmother's Bible, into a small storage unit near my job. I did it on a lunch break. I didn't cry until later, alone, when I realized I was packing up a life I had tried so hard to protect. Simone didn't notice what I was doing because she didn't pay attention to what didn't serve her. She kept talking about her promotion and how Darian expects excellence. She kept practicing smiles in the mirror. She kept treating me like a wallet that sometimes spoke out of turn. Meanwhile, I was building a different future with the same quiet discipline she mocked. The end came without a shouting match. I came home from work, sat at the kitchen table, and slid an envelope toward Simone. She opened it and saw the separation filing and a simple breakdown of finances. What I paid, what she spent, what I was no longer responsible for. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She laughed, sharp and mean, and said, "You really think you're worth all this?" I looked at her and answered, "I know I am." That was the first time she looked uncertain. Not remorseful, just uncertain. Because she realized I wasn't begging her to value me. I was valuing myself without her permission. Simone tried to punish me socially after that. She told people I was cheap. She told her family I abandoned her. She tried to bait me into arguments so she could label me angry. I didn't give her anything to hold. I kept my responses short and factual. I let my lawyer speak. I kept going to work. I took a promotion quietly, better pay, better hours, less strain. I didn't post it. I didn't announce it. I just started sleeping through the night. I started eating meals without dread. I started laughing again, small and real, like my body remembered joy. Months later, I saw Simone once at a grocery store in Streeterville. She looked polished but tired. She walked past me like I was invisible, still committed to disrespect. I nodded politely and kept moving. My life was smaller but safer. My success was private. A clean apartment, a steady routine, money that stayed where I earned it, and peace that didn't depend on someone else's approval. Every humiliation Simone served came back to her in a form she couldn't charm away. Declined payments, lost access, and the quiet realization that the man she called broke was the only reason her lifestyle ever felt rich. I never needed revenge. I just needed receipts, boundaries, and the courage to leave. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.